You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
You gotta give a little, take a little, and let your poor heart break a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love.
So, 91 Reasons has this Patreon page where people who support the show, and they give us a couple of bucks, whatever they can spare. It all goes to the costs of hosting the show and stuff, various costs here and there. It's interesting in that you get such a mix of who supports the show, and one of the rewards on it, basically the only reward, other than getting a mention on the show. Because what am I going to do? Come over and make you dinner? I don't have that kind of time. But one of the rewards is you can pick a movie for me to review, and I will sit and watch it. And even if it's a movie I've seen 100 times, I will sit and watch it again to really look at it and get a new perspective on it. That happened really well with Blade Runner, a movie I'd seen over and over. And even the last time I watched it was like, oh, I've never noticed that part of it before. So it allows me to re-examine movies that I've already seen over and over again. Or in the case of Patrick, he likes to pick movies that are unashamedly terrible. And I don't mind that at all. Schlock has its place, as we've said time and time again. And then some people just like to, review movies that I've never seen, or movies that are very personal to them. And such is the case this week with my good friend Monique, my Back to the Future friend, who chose Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. This is a classic movie from 1967, and you know what? I've never seen it before. It's just one of those movies that, for whatever reason, managed to slip through the cracks of all of the stacks and stacks of movies that I've watched, including... it's not like I'm a snob or anything. When I worked at Blockbuster Video, we were allowed to watch children's movies or classics till like 5 o'clock. And I watched a lot of Jimmy Stewart. And I watched a lot of Spencer Tracy and Tracy and Hepburn. But for whatever reason, I've never seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So I had the very fortunate opportunity to shut the world out and watch this movie. So it's a beautiful morning here in Buena Park. It's been raining all morning, which is such a rarity here. So sitting out here in the Cafe 80s, the ground is wet outside. It's just, I know the rest of the country thinks I'm crazy, but for us Californians, it's a novelty. Rain is a novelty. So we enjoy it for what it is. But, I dropped my phone. Hold on. I have to have my phone out because for a movie like this that I don't know everything about backwards and forwards, I do have the Wikipedia page up. Not that it's going to help me out, because I'm not here to review the movie. You can go to any site and get a review of the movie. We're here to talk about what the movie means and why it's important. Look at this film, 1967. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is a movie about race relations told through the eyes of a young girl, a young white girl who brings home Sidney Poitier to get approval and blessing on her marriage to him. Now, they've just met in Hawaii. They've only known each other for 10 days. And her parents just happen to be Tracy and Hepburn. Now, this is Spencer Tracy's last movie. He died before it was even released. So it gave it quite a box office boost when it was released. And And it's interesting when you look at a film like this. This is a movie that was released at the height of the civil rights movement. They make a Martin Luther King joke in it. Guess who's coming to dinner? I don't know, Martin Luther King, who was assassinated a year later. So the subsequent versions of it had that line cut out. So this is a movie released at the height of the civil rights movement, and it shows a black and white couple trying to get married and undo the racial prejudices of an entire generation. That's a noble movie. That's a noble thing to do. In this day and age today, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color you are. Nothing. Anybody can marry anybody. Here in California, a man can marry a man, a woman can marry a man, or any combination thereof. You can marry. You can have a triad if you want. Times have changed. Thank goodness, the world is more tolerant. The media would have you believe that there's a race war going on between blacks and whites, but that's not the case. There are villains on each side, jerks as I like to call it. But here, we have no prejudices here. I've never looked at the color of anybody's skin versus their merit. People are the sum of what they do, not what they look like. I think I've proven that again and again. But in 1967, that's a whole different world, pal. So what they do is, the movie does two very smart things. The first that they do is they make Sidney Poitier. First, they cast Sidney Poitier, one of the finest actors to ever grace the silver screen. And they make his character so incredibly perfect that the only thing you can, if you're in that mindset, hold against him is his skin color. Because here's a guy who works in Africa. He helps the needy. He sets up hospitals and doctors and flies around the world curing disease. He's perfect. He's a perfect man. And then on the other end, you cast Tracy and Hepburn as the parents. Arguably, at the point of this film, the most beloved movie couple of all time up until 1967. They'd made so many movies together. They were so linked together as the perfect couple that having them wrestle with the race question firmly puts it in the face of America. You know what I mean? If they can stand up to this, anybody can stand up to this. So the movie is very, very smartly cast. Directed by Stanley Kramer, who had directed a few classics himself. But it really is Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Sidney Poitier's movie. I mean, it really is. Funny enough, you'll see Isabel Sanford as Tilly, the housekeeper. She would be incredible. I mean, and she's big in this movie, but she'd be incredibly famous a decade later as Wheezy Jefferson on the Jeffersons. I mean, that's how I knew her. The minute she opened her mouth, I was like, oh my God, that's Wheezy, you know? Bits don't burn in the kitchen, and beans don't burn on the grill. Yeah, well, we're moving on up. I mean, I love the Jeffersons, man. One of my favorite shows of all time. But in the context of this film, she's the most racist one of all. The black housekeeper is the most racist one of all because she thinks Poitier's trying to pull some scam. And the scene where she walks in on him changing is the only scene in the movie that contains the N-word. Like, I was shocked. Like, the movie is shocking a couple of times. Like, bam, racism right in your face. Like, you can feel it like, I'm making a punching noise. Like, emotion, like, right in your face. Because we've come so far, folks. We've come so far in society of saying that you are going to be judged on your character, not your skin color. That's how I was raised. Generation X, the generation I'm part of, we are the ones who took the ball from the civil rights movement, because it was when we were born. And as we grew up, we simply were taught race didn't matter. Everybody was equal. So the lessons and the fight worked. And watching this movie, you can see the road people had to climb up. And it was not easy. And it was hard. And it's encapsulated in this little candy-colored comedy, which it looks like a play, because 90% of it takes place just in their house set. And that was the other interesting thing I could see on the movie. When I read some of the Wikipedia stuff, it totally makes sense now, but it didn't while I was watching it. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. There's a scene in the museum. I take it back. Hepburn's not at the museum. The daughter and Poitier are at the museum. There are very few shots that take place outside, and virtually none with Spencer Tracy. His health is so bad. Reading about it, here's why. He's dying. The movie wrapped, and less than a month later, he's dead. You know, they could only film for short bursts of time with him because of his health was so bad. But anytime they're in a car, their rear projection is just the worst. There's a sequence where Hepburn and Tracy go out for ice cream, and the car scenes are he's like swiveling the steering wheel, and it doesn't really match up with what's going behind him. And then they cut to another car pulling up to the ice cream place. They cut back to rear screen projection out the window. So you could totally tell, like, Tracy and Hepburn never left whatever studio backlot this was filmed on, and somebody else went up to San Francisco and filmed all those shots. I get all that. And now that I know, like, oh, the guy's dying, well, no wonder, right? But it is interesting, in the ice cream scene, he tells the car hop, he says, look, I was here before, and I got some ice cream and I really liked it. I don't remember what flavor it was. And she starts rattling off all these flavors, and finally he settles on, of all flavors, boysenberry. So she brings him boysenberry sherbet, and I'm like, how great is that? It's a Knott's Berry Farm reference right in the film. Now they call it Oregon boysenberry, which there's no such thing. Boysenberry's from Orange County, California, not Oregon. But it is funny that it's in the film so prominently, and probably meant to be exotic and not, strawberry or banana or something like that, right? But the other interesting part about that scene is he backs out right into some guy's car and just dents the side. Really cool little roadster. And the modern day me is like, oh my God, the whole movie's now going to be about fixing this guy's car. And the guy goes, man, you did $50 or $40 damage to my car. And Tracy just gives him $50 and drives off. Like, it's a totally different time. There's no lawsuits. You just pay him off and you drive. It was really like, it's a startling reminder of the time period that you're in and how different things are, as if the racial relations didn't do that, Jeff. Oh, thank you. Another funny sequence, the housekeeper has, she says who it is. I don't think it's her daughter. I think it's somebody else's daughter, like her niece or something. But a very pretty black girl is working at the house, like taking luggage up. And then when the white meat delivery guy shows up, he comes bopping out of the car and dancing. And then she says, well, I need a ride downtown. He's like, well, I'll take you, kitty cat, let's go. And they start bopping to the car. And it's really interesting. You never see those characters again. But it was a not so subtle reminder that in this snapshot, the very young people have no problem with race. They don't see race, they just see people. And it's the older generation that is going to have the problem. And the interesting thing about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because I worked at the video store when this came out. There was a time, I know, shocker, there was a time when not every movie was available whenever you wanted it. And the studio would put out the new releases every week, and then every once in a while they would unload like 20 classics that had never been on videotape before and stick them in with the new releases. So, like, if somebody came to the store and said, hey, I'm looking for that movie, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Now, if this is 1987, we say, well, it's not available. It hasn't come out yet. And they go, what? 1988, you can rent it. And I remember these commercials. They go, MGM opens its vaults and brings you Thunder Road. Guess who's coming to dinner? And blah, Mr. Blandings builds his dream home, or whatever it is. And we would, they would ask for these movies, and we'd have them. And I can remember, like, I knew what the movie was about, and I knew the title. But I thought Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was a pretty, like, by-the-numbers film about a young white girl bringing home a black guy and trying to get approval from her parents. But it's not. And it's a very smartly made movie in that just when you think you've figured it out, they keep adding these layers and these twists to it. She comes home, and Katharine Hepburn spends most of the movie on the verge of tears. But she's very accepting right off the bat. Well, of course you can marry him if you're in love. And then it's the housekeeper that's completely against the whole thing. So when the dad shows up, there's a great sequence where you can see him putting it together, what's going on, right? And then the big twist is they invite Portier's parents to dinner. So the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner thing keeps coming up. Well, guess who's coming to dinner? My fiance. Oh, really? Yes. And the Monsignor character, who's the conscience of the whole movie. And then finally the parents. And it's like, all these people are coming to dinner. Now, I knew the reference from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, when they invite the Klingon ambassador to dinner, and Chekhov says, guess who's coming to dinner? But it's a very smartly made movie in that it keeps building, because the premise of the movie is easy. This couple shows up, and Portier takes the father and mother aside and says, unless you approve of this marriage, we ain't getting married. So all Spencer Tracy has to do is say, I don't approve, and he's out. Portier leaves. But he can't do that. The Tracy character can't do that because it's his daughter's happiness on the line. And here's the thing. He's the newspaper publisher in town, and he's ultra-liberal. So when the father, Monsignor character shows up, and he's the guy that's the conscience of the movie, says, well, look at you, you're finally a liberal with your beliefs finally staring you right in the face. And I always knew there was a bigot in you waiting to get out. And you're like, oh, this is a guy who's finally got to put his money where his mouth is. It's okay when it involved everybody else, but now that it involves my family, what am I going to do about it? And the genius of this movie is in the casting, because Portier, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, they are living in the moments between the lines. When somebody else is talking, watch them. They are in the moment, living it. These are some of the finest actors ever. Spencer Tracy may be on his way out, but he's still in the game as an actor in this one. And oh my God, he looks so much like Carl Fredricksen from Up, It Ain't Funny. But I've taken a lot of acting classes, and the one thing that they tell you again and again is that acting is reacting. It's one thing to take a line of dialogue, I know that you killed him. It's another to be the guy being accused and to fill that moment. And all the acting coaches I had would always tell me, fill the moments. And that's where acting is. And that's what's happening in this. Ignore the San Francisco skyline in the background. Like, it's so fake. But, it doesn't really matter. Because the actors that are inhabiting this world are so good. They are filling in those moments. When the couple goes to the gallery to try to find Hepburn. They don't find her there, but they talk to her second in command. She ends up showing up later at the house after we've met the couple, learned about them. The manager of the gallery shows up at the house, and basically she's there to offer her condolences to Katharine Hepburn. And Hepburn excuses them, takes the woman outside, and in maybe my favorite scene of the whole movie, tells her to go back to the gallery, write a check to cash for $5,000, and basically to get the hell out of her life and pretend they never met. And it's just such a powerhouse scene. It's done with manners and smile. She puts the knife in with a smile and then gets a bigger smile as she twists it and sends that woman on her way. And it's such a moment of, we know whose side she's on, but oh, it was so good. I found myself laughing out loud quite a few times during this movie because of the acting and the skill with which they do these lines. And that one is just flawless. She sends that woman packing. That woman doesn't even realize she's being thrown out before it's, until it's too late. And that's why it's so good. He tells her to take her ugly kinetic sculpture with her. It's very, very funny. Oh my God. There's another sequence where you can tell, again, they didn't film this in San Francisco. This is all filmed on sound stages here in Hollywood. But they go to this like a bar to have drinks, but like a nightclub in the middle of the day. But look in the background, every painting is of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, cable cars, because they're trying to reinforce that they're really in San Francisco, even when they're not. And that's those subtle things that the director puts in there to keep you in the world. And I applaud that. And you meet their friends who are of the same generation. Now, these are people, the daughter's character would have been born in 1944. And Poitier's character would have been born in the 30s. So it's weird to think like how the generations move. And you tend to think of 40s as baby boomers, 40s and 50s as baby boomers. So in this film, the baby boomers are the ones that are pushing the agenda of racial equality. And it was Generation X that picked it up and said, we don't have a deal with this. We have no problem. The sins of the father do not connect to the current day. They just don't. I don't have any prejudice. I'm prejudiced against stupid people, but stupid knows no color. But the movie takes its final turn when his parents fly in, and the mother, while being open-minded, just like Hepburn, the father is as stubborn as Tracy, even more so. There's a powerhouse scene between him and Poitier where he says, I carried my mailbag 75,000 miles to give you every opportunity you had. So you're going to listen when I tell you. And Poitier just slams him down and goes, I am not you. Says such a good line when he goes, you have always seen yourself as a colored man when I have seen myself only as a man. And oh, what a line that is. And the acting on the part of the father in that scene is so good because it's like hits him that his son is right. And that his son has managed to break the race barrier. He doesn't even see Joanna as white. She only sees Joanna. He's never even slept with her. That's not even part of the plot. And she doesn't know he's made the ultimatum that he'll leave if they don't get the parents' permission or approval. So, when everything finally boils... It's interesting that the movie boils down to Spencer Tracy staring off into space in the garden and making having this epiphany of what he's going to do about this situation, because the clock is ticking. That's the other thing that's interesting, is that the movie's always got the clock ticking. Tick, tick, tick. We've got one evening to get this over with. We also have to have dinner, and then everybody's flying out. And whatever decision we've made by then is going to have to stick. And when the movie comes down to the white guy making the decision, you have a moment of, oh, I didn't see that we were heading towards this. And instead of him giving his approval and, basically saying, it's fine that you've married my daughter, I've given my permission, he just says, it's not up to me. You guys have decided together that you're going to face whatever problems the world has, but that you love each other enough to do it. And that's when he says, you have to get married if you've decided all of that. And it's so great, because had the movie ended with him saying, I give my permission, it would have undone everything they tried to do. And that's because it's really smartly written. Really, really well done. And it's interesting that a lot of actors who are not doing well, their final film usually is terrible. They're usually in such bad health that it shows through on the screen. I had no idea. I thought Spencer Tracy lived another decade. I had no idea that he was dead by 1967. But I don't follow a lot of that. Now, he did star in Inherit the Wind, one of my favorite classics of all time. But most actors, their last films, look at Raul Julia. Amazing career. His last film is Street Fighter, And some have untimely deaths, like Brandon Lee got killed filming The Crow, Or Oliver, what was his name? Oliver from the guy who his last movie is Gladiator. He's fantastic in it. I will teach you to be a gladiator and to entertain the crowds. Oliver Reed. But Tracy and Hepburn had a legacy. It's a great movie to go out on because it's a message movie. Again, at the height of the civil rights movement. That's a brave thing to do, and the movie did really well. And whether we like it or not, movies are a huge indicator of public opinion. And I like to call them snapshots right in that time. Boom, right in that time. It's been remade a couple of times. The same director remade it as a TV movie in the mid-'70s. Most notably, it was remade as Guess Who, where they flipped the race, and it was a black girl bringing home Ashton Kutcher to meet her dad, Bernie Mac. I have no desire to watch that. I am not an Ashton Kutcher fan of any kind. I'd rather watch somebody make salad all day than an Ashton Kutcher movie. Has he done a good movie? Is there one? And don't say, Dude, Where's My Car? The Butterfly Effect? There's a whole series of actors and actresses that have made dozens of movies, and I have never seen them. Like, they're just not part of my world. But Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is fantastic. I am so glad Monique picked that movie. I had a really good time watching it. It's a great message movie, very well acted, very well directed. And again, if you take the time to watch it, really look at the other actors in the scene as they're reacting to what's going on, because that's where the movie is. And the Monsignor, if they did this as a play, I would want to play him. When he tells him, I've got half a mind to wrestle you to the ground before I let you go downstairs and make that decision you're going to make. It's so good. And look at the scene where Spencer Tracy is shaving and arguing with Katharine Hepburn. And not only is he shaving and arguing, but he's drinking bourbon at the same time. I've done a lot of things. I don't think I've ever had a mixed drink while I was shaving. And I couldn't figure out why it was there, except it does end with him putting the shaving brush in the wrong cup, which I thought was really funny. The movie has a lot of that, a lot of heart and a lot of funny moments. But it doesn't detract from the overall message of the movie of following your heart. The heart wants what the heart wants, and the heart doesn't see color or age or race or anything. And I'm happy that we live in a country now where you can follow your heart and marry whoever you want to marry. You know? Different religions can marry, different races. We do have freedoms in this country. And I don't care what the evening news says. There's no race war going on. They love to show you pictures of a few people having a fight. But that doesn't mean that the entirety of our country is a-holes. Because I refuse to believe that. And I certainly wouldn't take part in it. So thank you, Monique, for picking a great movie to review. Her next one is just as good, if not better. And I'll get to that one as soon as I have more time in my schedule. I got to catch up on some other Patreon reviews. If you have a movie you'd like desperately me to talk about, go to patreon.com and search 91 Reasons. For a small donation, I can review whatever you want. Even a movie you made, if that's what you want. You know, guess who's coming to dinner? Thank you, Mr. Chekhov. Check out our Patreon page. Check out our Facebook page. Leave us a review on iTunes, whatever. Watch good movies, folks. They're out there. I used to tell people when I worked at the video store, there's movies beyond the new release wall. Go to the classics. Seek out the great actors and see some of their movies you've never seen before. There are good ones out there, I promise you. And Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is one of the best. Fantastic movie. Sidney Poitier, I really enjoyed him in a little-known film called Sneakers. If you've never seen Sneakers with him and Robert Redford and Dan Aykroyd and River Phoenix, really cool movie. So check that. It was directed by Phil Alden Robinson, who did Field of Dreams. So check out Sneakers and check out Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and check out the next episode of 91 Reasons.
You gotta laugh a little, cry a little, before the clouds roll by a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
Guess who's coming to dinner?